Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We got our Week 7 starts and sits.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Champs?
What's cracking?
I friggin' lost this week. Again.
I won.
So let me tally this up. I've lost to a kicker twice. And yeah, I just straight up lost another matchup. So I should be 5-1.
You know, whose fault is it that kickers are in our league?
The commission. Well, it's not the commissioners because if I put this up for a vote, it's not happening.
It might.
I got me, you, and one other person.
And you don't know.
We need
about
7 votes.
I mean, how many people do you know would say no definitively?
My cousin and Sean.
Okay.
Not to name drop on our podcast.
Yeah, but there's a lot of undecided voters that, you know, might swing the vote. You should have at least tried, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Your own fault.
It is what it is. Anyway, welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
What's up?
Today we have our Week 7 starts and sits. It should be an interesting little episode. Thursday Night Football is back. Who is it this time?
Giants.
Oh, yeah, Giants-Eagles. Yep. Bad game. Yep. Very, I don't know, maybe one person.
Crapshoot.
Let's see, Slayton might start in some
Giants
leagues.
Kicker.
You got Giants kicker. Okay.
Eagles kicker. Jake Elliott.
You tried. So we're going to give you some starts and sits for this episode. But before we do that, be sure to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. Like us at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform, subscribe. Hit the big sub button.
Yeah, just subscribe. You listen to our show. We know you want to subscribe. Just do it. Simple.
And then share it with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, 1,000 subscription goal at the end of the season would get Rick's all Rick's hair. Is it? You're not wearing a hat today, so everyone can see the glorious locks that would be shaved off. Be sure also, when you hit the subscribe button, to click the bell for notifications to get notifications whenever we post a brand new podcast episode. Also, like and comment down below any start and set questions you have for the week. So let's start with our first one. Rick, why don't you tell them who our quarterback start of the week is?
Our quarterback start of the week is Matt Stafford. He's playing the Atlanta Falcons this week in Atlanta. And the reason we chose Matt Stafford, you chose him technically because you made this list, but I 100% agree.
Okay.
Is because Atlanta.
So wait a minute. Let's take this off for a second. You're basically prefacing your statements on Matt Stafford by the fact that I made the list, so that if this is wrong, it's my fault.
No, I put my name up. I'm just saying that you did create the list. I did create your list.
I mean, whatever. It is my list.
But if I
was going to make you make the list, but then I knew you would just agree with everything I would say, so that's how it is.
I was going to say, because if I made the list this week.
Oh, no.
I already knew who the start of the week quarterback was going to be. If you made this list or if I made this list, it was going to be Matt Stafford.
I thought you were going to say somebody else.
Atlanta, dude. It was going to be Gardner Minshew.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
My favorite quarterback. Oh, poor guy. But yeah, Matt Stafford against Atlanta. As I was saying, Atlanta's defense has stunk this year. We saw Kirk Cousins, who, even though he struggled hard in the first half, still put up like 26 fantasy points against Atlanta this past week. They rank dead last against quarterbacks. I think every single week it feels like the quarterback that plays them is worth being a start, and then they end up doing good. And not only is that the case for like an average to below average quarterback, but Matt Stafford's a borderline start of the week anyway. depending on his matchup. Like, he's almost matchup proof. He's a very solid quarterback who has a good floor from week to week. He's a top probably 12 fantasy quarterback who's got the best matchup in fantasy this week. I could easily see him getting a top 7, top 8 finish, and he should be in your lineups for sure this week.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, obviously Atlanta blows. There's no two ways about it. They don't have a good defense. It doesn't matter if they made their head coach the defensive coordinator. It doesn't make the team good defensively. So Atlanta has given up 29.9 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. Yeah. And it's 6 weeks into the season. You're not really used to seeing that high a total for a defense giving up points. But anyway, Atlanta completely blowing it. To give you a little perspective, the second closest team is the Seattle Seahawks with 25. So I would think that Matt Stafford is a pretty safe bet if you need, not if you need to start. I'd start him. I mean, where would you rank him this week?
He's going to be probably in my top. I mean, he's going to be in my top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I would say like top 7. Yeah.
Where would you rank him?
Probably 7 or 8. I have to get
the list, though. I have no idea.
Yeah. He'll probably end up 7 or 8 for me, but I think, against Atlanta, I mean, it's a pretty safe bet. If you're in a 12-team, 14-team league, you got to get him.
Depending on who's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Matt Stafford, start of the week at quarterback. Sit of the week at quarterback, we got Jared Goff, who actually has not been too horrible this year.
No, he's had
some decent games. He's had some tough games. He started the season with 11 points, but since then he's had 23, 28, 11, 24, and 15. So he's had some 20-point games. He's had some down games. Funny part is all of his good games are on the road, and that makes little to no sense. Probably
it's because
there's no fans. So yes. Anyway, this week against Chicago, if you have Jared Goff on your team and you're looking to, you need a quarterback start for this week, this is not the week to start Goff. So far this year, the Chicago Bears have consistently given up 12 fantasy points a game to the quarterback position. This is not going to change with Jared Goff. The Bears aren't going to all of a sudden suck against the Rams. You know what I mean? Their defense is pretty good. What are they, 4-1? 5-1? I can't remember.
Which team?
Bears.
Or the Bears? The Bears are 4-1, I think.
Yeah. So the Bears are 4-1 because of their defense. And I would be irresponsible to start Jared Goff at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bears are 5-1. Yeah, Jared Goff against the Bears, it's just a tough matchup. I mean, there hasn't been a single quarterback that has played well fantasy-wise against that defense. It's just been tough each week, and Goff is somebody who I like a lot, but I don't think he's at the point where he's matchup proof. We've obviously seen what he can do, but we've seen what he can't do this year, and he's had some poor weeks.
Right.
And not really all his fault, like the Giants week. Or was it the Giants week, or was it and week 1 too? Like they were winning in like week 1 against Dallas. They were winning a lot the whole game, and they kind of ran the ball a lot to like Malcolm Brown, if you remember correctly. So they have been trying to run the ball heavy this year too. And against Chicago, just like with that defense and the up and down play with Jared Goff, I'm just really not trying to start him this week. I think there's going to be just better options out there with better matchups at the quarterback position.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the ability to head to the waiver wire and pick up a quarterback and run them, I mean, if you're in a super flex league and you only got 2 quarterbacks and you got to kind of start.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
but outside of that, if you're in a 1 quarterback league, there's probably other options out there for you. So
right.
I would go and try to, pick somebody up off the waiver wire. If you already have another quarterback, slot him in ahead of Jared Goff, because Goff is not going to have a good week against Chicago. Start of the week at running back, Justin Jackson. Did we put him on this list last week? I feel like we put him on this list last week.
I don't think we did.
But Justin Jackson is going off against, they're in I believe no, they're in Los Angeles and they're playing off against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars have given up the fifth most fantasy points this year to running backs, 24.7 points per game. Justin Jackson and Josh Kelly have been getting a little bit like of a split. But this past week we saw Justin Jackson get a little bit more work in the offense. He had 15 carries, 5 receptions. So I feel like this is a player that, and he had a 60% snap percentage. So I feel like this is a player that going out this week, he's earned the Eckler role at this point, the starting job. Yeah. He's earned it for now until Eckler gets back. There was Eckler news. So listen to tomorrow's podcast, figure out what that Eckler news is, or Google it. You can just go to Google. But anyway, so Justin Jackson though is a perfect start this week, especially going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I would slot him in your starting lineup pretty easily this week and expect. I want to say what would you say, like 15 points?
Yeah, in half PPR, I think 15 points is reasonable. Yeah, with Jacksonville, like that defense is just not great. And chances are the way Jacksonville's been playing this year, and I know the Chargers have not been good. They have a very poor record.
Right.
But in every game they've played, they've been close. I mean, they were close to Tampa. They were close to New Orleans. They were close to the Chiefs. Like they've been playing these tough teams, and they've almost been winning. So they're much better than what their record says. So against a team like Jacksonville, I think they have an opportunity to be in a positive game script.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do that, they can control the ball, run the ball heavy in the second half. And like you said, Justin Jackson has really taken over that Austin Eckler role. I think the big thing with him was getting 5 catches this past week, even though it was only for 23 yards, which is not great. But if he continues to do that consistently in the next few weeks, which I think he can, against a team like Jacksonville, if he gets the same amount of touches, if he gets 15 carries for 5 catches, and gets 20 touches in the game, he's going to have like a 15, 16-point fantasy week.
Yeah.
At minimum, in my opinion, because Jacksonville's defense is kind of poor.
One of the things that jumped off the page to me when I did look up his stats this week was the 6 targets in the game. That's not really, even when you go back to his other years, that's not been something that has, like, first 2 years of his career. Of course, he didn't play that much, but he had 19 targets total in the season, 11 targets total in the season in games that he played like fully because of a Gordon injury or Eckler was out. I believe there was like one game last year where Eckler and Gordon were both out and Justin Jackson came in and played the full work. Like, he's never been a player to get that many targets. It probably shows in that 4.6 yards per carry. I mean, yards per catch.
Yeah.
But anyway, if they continue to target him like they did in this game, 5 or 6 times for, the remainder of time that he has, it is relatively interesting to see what you might get from Justin Jackson. But they like this kid. I mean, obviously he's earned the starting job, so hopefully he does have a good game this week. But he's the defenses he's playing is not that great.
Who's Joshua Kelly only? Oh,
go ahead.
I'll just quickly say Joshua Kelly only had a 35% snap share to compare to 60%. Yep. So even though they are in a kind of a split, I feels like Jackson is getting a majority of that.
Yeah, they're not really Los Angeles. I know some organizations, especially ones that do I believe the Packers do a lot of multiple running back sets. They put a running back on the left or right of Rodgers, but the Chargers don't do that. They just one running back on the field, one running back off the field. It doesn't overlap,
right.
So, Justin Jackson getting a majority of that work. But who is the sit of the week at running back? Or sits, I should say.
49ers running backs against the New England Patriots.
And you know what's going to happen? Mostert's going to come back, and he's on IR, right?
He's expected to go on IR.
Okay, all right, never mind.
Announced, but I think he's going to be out for I was
going to say, every time I say like somebody on the 49ers is going to have a bad week, like one of them rips off a 70-yard run for a touchdown.
It's because it's the 49ers and they run the ball very effectively.
Yep.
Granted, they are playing the Patriots this week, who have a very good run defense. Although if it was anything like last week, then the 49ers will probably have success because the Patriots blew last week. But I mean, I wouldn't trust 49ers running backs this week if you have a better option. Just because that defense is really good, and it feels like McKinnon will probably – it's going to be McKinnon. But with Kyle Shanahan, you never know. They might use that rookie running back that they used this past week, who got like 9 carries. They might use some Jeff Wilson. So they might try to get all those guys involved. And against New England's very good defense, it's going to be hard for all of them to succeed, or even one of them if they use all of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think any running back against New England's always going to be a tough matchup. But the 49ers right now, they have been, I mean, offensively, they got better last week with Garoppolo not throwing 60 interceptions and getting benched in the third quarter. Probably for the best. But anyway, what did he throw? 3 touchdowns. So 49ers offense got back to normal this past week. But I feel like this week against New England, New England's been pretty good defensively, even though they've had some tough matchups. They held like the Chiefs to a pretty low point total, and they were holding them back for a majority of the game. So I feel like the running back, especially without Mostert, I do love Jerick McKinnon. I don't know if he's going to play in this game. He's going to play, right?
Yeah, he's expected to start.
Okay. I didn't know if he had an injury or anything like that. But anyway, New England Patriots running backs. I mean, the New England Patriots defense give up only 14 points a game to the running back position, especially when you're talking about a running back by committee where they're going to give the ball to McKinnon and give the ball to, what's his name? Jeff Wilson and somebody else. The one other guy, the rookie who died. Honestly, I don't even care to know his name. But, I'll probably need to know his name 2 weeks from now because he'll be starting.
He'll be starting. Yeah.
What happened to Tevin Coleman? Is he dead?
You think he's still on IR?
Anyway, so if you're only giving up, 14 points per game to the running back position, and you got 2-3 guys running it equally, I'm not sure we're going to see. I'm not saying I think McKinnon will get a majority of the work, but when I say majority, if they run it 25 times, it's going to be 13 rushes for Jerick McKinnon. You know what I mean? If that happens, then there's not much opportunity for these guys to put up massive fantasy point totals. So I just sit any one of those running backs and just call it a day.
Philip Lindsay did torch the Patriots last week, though. Unfortunately.
Very true.
For us Patriots fans.
Wide receivers. We got Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins versus Cleveland. Cleveland currently, as it stands, they give up. Let's see what they got. What they give up per game. Number 4, worst to wide receivers. 30.5 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. And you have an offense where AJ Green's essentially useless. He had a good game this past week, but he probably will not be targeted. T. Higgins has the highest target share and snap percentage over the last couple weeks. And so he and Tyler Boyd both get 7 or more targets a game at this point. And against the Cleveland Browns defense, I mean, this is going to be a game where I think Burrow is going to actually be able to move the ball down the field and make plays. Especially if Cincinnati's a terrible defense. So Cleveland's going to be running it up and down the field on them, scoring a lot. And so, we can assume that Joe Burrow is going to be playing from behind, which means you're going to see Higgins and Tyler Boyd involved early and often. So if you own either one of these guys, I would start them this week with comfort that they're going to be somewhere in the wide receiver 2 range. If not, maybe one of them can jump into the wide receiver 1 range, low end.
Yeah, I'd be 100% confident starting both these guys this week. Last time these two teams played, back in Thursday night in week 2, there was a total of 65 points in that game, 35-30. So I think this game is also going to be pretty high scoring. And as you said, Cleveland's probably going to try to control the game early on. There's a good chance they'll take the lead early on. Joe Burrow might have to play from behind and throw the ball a lot. And they've been throwing the ball a lot anyway all year. Partly because they've been behind in most games, but even when they're not, they like to throw the ball. So I could see Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins getting a lot of targets and a lot of work in a potentially high scoring game. Yeah,
I totally agree. It's funny because I own both of these players in a league.
In one league?
In one league with 2 flexes. I'm starting both.
Starting them both. Oh, okay.
That's so gross. I started both. I'm like, what am I doing?
I mean, it depends what other.
It was actually 3 flex spots, and I'm like, I don't have bye weeks and everything. I don't have any players left except Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, so I got to start both of them. Hey, who knows? Maybe both will get
might not be that
12
bad.
points each, and we'll be good. But anyway, for the sit of the week at wide receiver, what do we got, Rick?
We have CeeDee Lamb, my boy, against Washington.
You were like pumped to start him this week, but Washington's defense a little bit different this year.
I'm in a league where I have options, and I was going to start CeeDee Lamb, and then you were like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah,
and I was like, "I don't know.
Why would you do that?
He's been doing good this year." And then you're like, "But he's playing Washington, who is like third against wide receivers, and he's got Andy Dalton as quarterback." And I thought about it for a second. I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." CeeDee Lamb.
Washington did a 180 because last year they were like the team to play against down in Miami.
It's weird with wide receivers. I think it's partly due to the increased pass rush that they have now this season. I think their pass rush is very good. It's one of the best in the league, which helps their secondary. With a guy like Andy Dalton, like I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. But there's a chance they could control the game, run it with Zeke. It feels like that type of game, not really crazy high scoring. Cowboy standards at least.
Right.
And with Andy Dalton as the quarterback, I really don't trust any Cowboys receiver except Amari Cooper right now. Even though Lamb has Andy Dalton at quarterback, Lamb still has a decent floor.
Yeah,
he does not have the ceiling he did have with Dak Prescott at quarterback. So he's been good this year, but against Washington, if you have better options, I would probably go with those options.
I think it's weird for Washington in the aspect that they're not an offense that's going to kind of run the table on you, and it's a weird matchup because when you look at the Washington offensive side of Washington, Dallas has given up so many fantasy points, so many points in general to everybody. And Washington just hasn't been very good offensively this year, that it's like it's a weird matchup where Dallas could actually have a good week defensively, but then again, Washington could also have a good week offensively. So it's not like Washington's going to be running the score up on Dallas, which means it's a little bit of a positive game script for Dallas. If that's the case, if they're able to stop Washington, that means worse things, because I feel like just on the, just seeing the other night, obviously it was weighted because it was against Arizona. Who were they playing Arizona on Monday night?
Yes.
Okay. Against them, I mean, Arizona was pretty much blowing them out for a majority of the game. And so they weren't able to get their offense going through Zeke. I feel like in this game,
well, he also fumbled twice, I think.
Oh God, why would you do that? But I feel like Washington, against Washington, they're probably going to try to get the ball going on the ground a lot more. Just purely on the fact that if Washington's not scoring, then there's no need for the Cowboys to come out and sling it. They don't want to put too much pressure on the red rifle.
Yeah.
So anyway, I feel like this is one of those games. And I think the rest of the season you're going to see this, especially with Cooper, is that I don't think that Andy Dalton is going to throw it 40 times a game. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think they want to do that.
At least
might
they don't
end
want
up happening,
yes.
But only because they're in a position where they're forced to do that.
But they trust, like, if they know they're just going to lose games, I don't think that they're going to, some teams are just so bad that they know they're going to lose, and so they try to play the game differently instead of just chasing from behind. Like the Jets know they're going to lose every week.
They just try to play the game the normal way.
Yeah. So instead of chasing the lead, and I'm like, the Jets are never going to win, so they just don't chase the lead. They just play. But I'm not saying the Cowboys are going to do it. I just think that I don't think that Andy Dalton's going to be throwing it 40 times a game. I think he's going to be throwing it 30 to 31 times a game, which limits the amount of target share that you have in this offense, which means that guys like Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, especially Michael Gallup, and I would say CeeDee Lamb too, because the McCarthy offense is predicated on the premise that you get a big wide receiver involved.
Do you know how many times Andy Dalton threw the ball though this week against Arizona?
Was it 42 or 43 times?
54.
Oh my God, bro.
But again, that wasn't supposed to happen. Gross. That wasn't a part of the game script. It was mostly because they were losing that entire game. But in their first drive or two, they were trying to run the ball consistently.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a reflection of the rest of the season. 31 to 35 times a game for Andy Dalton in a normal scenario, like against Washington. Their division blows. So I don't feel like this is going to be a situation where, there's going to be a lot of target share going in different directions. With Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb obviously is like a skyrocket through the ceiling. Without him, I still think he's going to be very good, but I just don't know, especially this week against Washington when they only give up 17 fantasy points a game to the wide receiver position. I just don't know that it's going to be a good start this week. So I would sit CeeDee Lamb for somebody else at this point. That could be dead wrong, and he could score 20. That's probably what's going to happen because of my life. Sit of the week at tight end really quickly. We'll go through the final 2 tight ends and then wrap up the show. Jerick McKinnon at Tennessee. You might be like, Rick was literally looking at this going, what the hell are you talking about? Tennessee is one of the best defenses in the NFL. For some strange reason, and this happens every year, they give up 10 fantasy points a game to the tight end position, which is 7th worst in the NFL. It's a top 8 easy matchup. So I feel like this is a start this week for Jerick McKinnon. I do feel like they do have Tennessee has one of the best secondaries in the NFL and one of the best pass rushes, to be honest with you. So I feel like Roethlisberger is going to try to dump it off to Ebron quite a bit in this game. Or at least get him involved in the center of the field.
I definitely would not have put Jerick McKinnon on this list if I knew. I mean, the only reason he is on this list is
if you just looked at the team, you would have been like, frick this.
Yeah, exactly. If I would have just looked at it, he would have probably been like one of my bottom options. Like he would have been way down the list. But you make some good points. Like Tennessee has struggled against tight ends for some reason this year.
Yeah.
And because of that, Jerick McKinnon, we could see him having a very good week. And the Steelers might be in a position where they're forced to throw the ball a little bit more this week compared to last. So we could see Jerick McKinnon having a good week.
Tell us the sit of the week at tight end.
This one also surprised me a little bit. Hayden Hurst against Detroit is our sit of the week at tight end. Detroit really doesn't have a good defense, but again, for some reason, they're good against tight ends. So Hayden Hurst, it's a tough matchup for him. You probably have a better option. If you do, go with that.
Agreed. I think Hayden Hurst has just been a boomer bust play all season. Obviously, Dallas is going to be playing from behind, but I feel like, like you said, Detroit has not been the best defense. So far this year, I believe they've given up 26 fantasy points a game, which it ranks top 8 in worst or most fantasy points given up to the wide receiver position. So they're probably going to be targeting the wide receiver position quite a bit in this game, which means Hayden Hurst is going to be left in the dust. So yeah, I wouldn't start Hayden Hurst this week, but that'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Be sure to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and don't forget to watch our episode Injury Report tomorrow.
Yeah, check it out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.